Hello and welcome to North Star Oasis. I'm your host, Jeff Williams, and no, I am not an empty chair today. So you do see my face, you do hear my voice, and we do have another action-packed, jam-packed, action-filled information overload coming your way on this August 9th, 2018. Now, if you notice, there is no lower thirds on our screen today. Unfortunately, we have a technical malfunction, so I have to tell you, this is North Star Oasis. I really wish our equipment was fully operational, but our technicians are dutifully on the job trying to get a quick repair. Unfortunately, the repair was not able to be completed in time for the taping of this episode. So, thank you for joining us today. We're going to really, our discussion for today is going to be about about tolerance and intolerance. You have the tolerance of the political left who want to, for years, decades, have all said that you have to be tolerant and accepting of people different from you. We need to celebrate diversity. We need to, anything that would normally be perceived as abnormal in a normal society, well, we have to accept that. You're not tolerant if you're not. We've heard that for 30, 40 years. Big preaching of political correctness and tolerance. What happened? The same people who have preached tolerance today are some of the most intolerant people. And that's what we're going to start off with on our Prager University segment titled, So, You Think You're Tolerant?
Tolerance. It's a word we hear a lot these days, so let's define it. Tolerance is the ability to live with people whose opinions and behavior you don't agree with. That's essentially how Oxford defines it, how Merriam-Webster defines it, and how we as a society have always defined it. You might be for the death penalty and your cousin might be against it. You might be against a $15 minimum wage and your coworker might be for it. Your dad might have voted for Trump, your mom might have voted for Clinton, and your brother may not have voted at all. Whatever differences we have, tolerating others' opinions is a prerequisite to a functioning and free society. America itself was built on a foundation of tolerance. The Declaration of Independence guarantees us life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But there's an implicit contract there. To have your life, your liberty, and your pursuit of happiness, you have to be tolerant of somebody else's life, their liberty, and their pursuit of happiness. This contract, though, seems to be breaking down. If you listen to the mainstream media, only one side is living up to this deal, the left. The right, according to the media, is intolerant of everyone, except those darned white heterosexual Christian males. There's only one problem. It's just not true. Incredibly, the left isn't even tolerant of the very people they say they're tolerant of. If you're gay or black or an immigrant and you're not in lockstep with current leftist orthodoxy, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you believe we should judge people on the content of their character and not the color of their skin, the left calls you racist. If you believe that America is a nation of immigrants, but that our country should also protect its borders, the left calls you a xenophobe. If you believe that men and women are equal but fundamentally different, the left calls you sexist. Here's the thing, those who only tolerate people they agree with or like aren't actually tolerant. So who is tolerant? Is it the organizers of the Women's March who had to apologize for the hurt and confusion they caused when they invited a man, leftist icon Bernie Sanders, to speak at their convention? Is it the Antifa thugs who caused UC Berkeley to spend $600,000 on security when mainstream conservative Ben Shapiro showed up to give a talk? Or is it Democratic Congresswoman Maxine Waters who scolded Kanye West for talking out of turn when he dared suggest that blacks should think for themselves? These aren't isolated examples. I'm guessing that you, person watching this right now, have silenced yourself because you don't want to suffer the wrath of the outrage mob. So let me ask the question again. Who is tolerant? Well, here's the surprise. It's actually those scary right-wingers that the media and the universities demonize every day. I speak from personal experience. Maybe I'm a glutton for punishment here, but I still consider myself a liberal. And it's my duty as a liberal to say what I think. I would rather stand for what I believe and be hated than bow down and be loved. The left, sadly, has become utterly intolerant of anyone with whom they disagree. Why? Because they believe that they know how you should live and how you should think. Any deviation, any nonconformity is dangerous to that goal. Believe it or not, the right these days actually welcomes diversity of thought. I can tell you that in the last few years of my political evolution, I've consistently found conservatives to be tolerant and open-minded. Don't take my word for it, though. Test it out for yourself. Go talk to some. They do exist, and they do things like watch movies, travel, and eat ethnic food. You know, regular people things. You know what I found out? The right, much more than the left, believes in the notion of live and let live. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the true definition of tolerance. I'm Dave Rubin of the Rubin Report for Prager University.
And I'll tell you this, that's something that I and a lot of my other conservative-leaning friends have done. We just go out and try to enjoy life. And yes, we do have politics more as an add-on. We don't always eat, sleep, drink, and breathe politics 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 366 days a year, including leap year. And we're also not obsessed with sex the way that the political left is, because everything for them is either is that you agree with them and it's all about sex. That's just the way they are. Now, in that video, it talked about you should know some examples of this kind of behavior. We're going to show you a few other examples of things. And this is stuff that happened recently, even stuff within the last week, of how the left is intolerant. And we're going to start off right now by showing something that happened on August 4th, which was, what, Saturday, I believe, as clashes erupt as counter-protest hits a Patriot Prayer rally in Portland. And they went so far as to desecrating or going after a Marine Corps recruiting station. Too bad the Marines weren't there locked and loaded. But this is your Antifa forces at work. This is the people that the Maxine Waters seem to hold up and endear because they're resisting. I don't know what they're resisting, but they're resisting something. So let's take a look at what happened in Portland this last week.
We got a hole. You got it, you got it.
The pedestrian crossings are closed. Remain on the sidewalk.
Now, did you notice what was in the middle of that crowd of Antifa members? Yes, that was the flag of the old Soviet Union. The communist flag was flying proudly in the middle of the Antifa group. It wasn't that they were opposing communism. They're calling the other side Nazis, but what did I see? I saw the Gadsden flag with "Don't tread on me" and "Live free or die." What's wrong with "Live free or die"? That was the state slogan for the state of New Hampshire, back when it was still a colony. So that's your Antifa at work. Now, unlike the days of the Obama administration, when Black Lives Matter and any other type of protest group would have their say and do whatever. What was the protests in New York, the Wall Street? That was constant. It was, you know, on the 1%. Constant protesting, and never having any police intervention. That was life during the Obama administration. Now, of course, you have Antifa. It propped up at the beginning of the Trump administration, and I'm glad to see that the Portland police are fighting back. And you can, for as liberal as Oregon is, and Portland especially, they fight back. In Minneapolis and St. Paul, they aid and abet. What's wrong with this picture? That's life in Minnesota under Governor Mark Dayton. So let's take a quick look here at the end of the Antifa Portland police clash on Saturday. It looks like we're reliving 1968 all over again. I think a lot of that's by design. Anyhow, that's not all. There's even more stuff from the intolerant left that popped up this week. Now, I do have to give a disclaimer here. This video that we're about to show you has a lot of foul language. So much foul language, thankfully we don't, it wasn't that long, but so much foul language that we couldn't even edit it out. There was just no point. So last week, or earlier this week on Monday, the founder of Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, and one of the other leaders, Candace Owens, they were at a Philadelphia coffee shop. Monday morning at a Philadelphia coffee shop. And this is the treatment that they were given because of their political views. Now, the people who are protesting, these two who came in to have breakfast, are the ones who, for 20, 30 years, taught us that we need to be tolerant. Now, here is their tolerance.
Call because we're eating breakfast and we happen to be conservative.
They're not Nazis, they're soft fascists. They're the soft fascists. They're not Nazis.
Have a wonderful day. Enjoy your capitalist breakfast.
Filming? This is crazy. So, ready? 1, 2, 3! Fuck the bourgeoisie! 4, 5, 6! Fuck the bourgeoisie! 1, 2, 3!
So now I'm wondering if Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens actually have the First Amendment right for freedom of assembly, including assembly at a Philadelphia coffee shop. Folks, what you are seeing exhibited here today from just these few clips is your Democratic Party at work. There used to be a day when I was growing up when the Democrats of the days gone by were actually pretty cool. And I say pretty cool meaning that they believed in America, they believed in the rights of working men, they believed in the red, white, and blue, that Democrats would go overseas and fight the wars alongside Republicans. It was just a different way of solving the problems in America. The Republicans believed in one thing, the Democrats believed in the other. They were opposites in how to fight political issues, but they were the same in the fact that they had America's self-interest first. That was the way it used to be. But now what we are seeing is Democrats are right, and if anybody there tells them they're wrong, they're going to scream at you, spit at you, swear at you, and they're going to impede your ability to live a normal life just because they don't agree with you. That to me is not tolerance. That to me is intolerance. And a lot of this, I think, really is criminal. I'm glad to see in Portland that they were able to start fighting back with the police. I guess some of the people who vandalized the Marine Corps recruiting station have been arrested. But where are the Democratic Party leaders saying, knock it off? You're giving us an image problem, because that's exactly what it is. And if you are a Democrat out there, I would highly recommend that you speak up within your Democratic community. Because these people that you're seeing here, Antifa, the protesters in Philadelphia, and it's not isolated to Philadelphia and Portland. It's here in the Twin Cities, I'm going to show in just a minute. They represent you. Now, are you happy to have them be your spokesman? Now, we're going to move on with something else that happened. This came out a few years ago regarding voter fraud, because this is the way the Democrats used to do it. They just do it fraudulently at the polls. Let's take a look at this next video.
If multiple people from other states showed up in New Hampshire on Election Day with either no ID or an out-of-state ID, could they have voted in Tuesday's primary?
Okay, and how long do I have had to live in New Hampshire before I can vote today?
Not long. There's not really a set time.
How long do I have to stay in New Hampshire to vote today?
There's no requirement.
Okay, and what?
Remarkably, we even found poll workers who seemed to support the idea of out-of-state campaign workers voting in a New Hampshire election.
This is why they wanted to change that law. Some people wanted to change the law.
Because people were
coming up here working on campaigns and voting.
All right.
Which I think when you come up here and work on a campaign and you vote, I think, you've been working hard on a campaign and you want to vote.
Just to clarify before I get to someone, so what I need, because I don't have an ID, and I can either do this here or there, wherever they decide, all I need is to sign an affidavit, and that's it, and I can vote in New Hampshire.
Basically, what we've been told by the Attorney General is that if you're willing to sign this, you can vote here today, because we can't do anything about it. You've admitted to us that you actually don't live here.
Yeah.
And so that puts us in a difficult situation. You're also signing this.
Reading it looks like it's more appropriate for me to be in Ware, which is fine, which is totally fine.
You know, if you felt comfortable doing this, it would be your call.
Right.
But I would say because my feeling is I don't ever want to deny anybody the right to vote.
Yeah, but technically I could fill that out and do that here.
Technically you can. I can't stop you. I can't stop you. I would just, it's your call.
So easy a caveman can do it.
Yeah.
Alrighty then. So I decided to see if James O'Keefe could vote in the New Hampshire primary.
Hey, I'm interested in establishing the domicile to vote.
Sure. What's your address?
I don't have my ID with me. Is that going to be an issue?
Yeah, well, there's a way to get around that.
How do I do that?
Well, we'll have you.
Okay. Oh, hello. I don't have any documents with me. Is that a problem?
What's your address?
I'm just concerned, like, do I need to give you...
What they're going to do is they're going to take a picture ID.
Not with me, no. No.
But if you go to that table, and they'll take a picture of you.
And how long do I have to be living here in order to register to vote?
I think it's 30 days, but I'm not sure that matters at this point because, new registrations, they're going to figure this out.
And how long do I have to stay here? Could I leave, in a few days?
I can check with the moderator for questions like this.
Elections in New Hampshire don't seem to have improved in the 4 years since Veritas was last here. They had to rewrite the laws back then, and based upon what we see here, they'll need to do it again. Stay tuned to Project Veritas Action, because next week we will introduce you to a number of Democratic campaign officials who aren't just skirting election laws, they're brazenly breaking them.
You can your mother in front of the governor and not go to jail.
What's the goal of overall campaign? And yeah, for me as an attorney, again, this is what this is something like that.
I assume you don't go off and tell these conversations to anybody.
No.
But this is
No, absolutely. So, no.
However, other people can make things happen that you don't need to know about. We talk about lots of things that we don't talk about.
You know what? We've been busting people into deep holes for 50 years, and we're not going to stop now.
This is part
the congressman for a second.
Wow. Do you think that that can't happen here? Well, it actually does. So first, let's take a look at our 5th Congressional District Congressman. We're going to go back to the tolerance bit for a moment here. Let's take a look at our 5th Congressional District Democrat Congressman who is now running for Attorney General. By the way, the primary is coming up on Tuesday. If you're a Democrat, I'd like to encourage you to vote for a different candidate. If you're voting in the DFL primary, I think Keith Ellison. We really need to retire him. Here's why. Let's take a look.
The congressman for a second. Right here in this studio, okay, the congressman told Al McFarland that the reason why he pays so much attention to foreign affairs is because he's on the Foreign Affairs Committee. Well, he's not. That was an outright lie. I mean,
right.
it was what it was.
I was on the Foreign Affairs Committee.
But
and I'm also on the House.
But you are not.
No, wait a minute.
We're going to try to stick to the deficit and the budget right now.
You want to talk about who's a liar? You're the liar.
Okay.
You lie all the time.
We have a question
on the Foreign
from
Affairs Committee. I was on the Foreign Affairs, and I'm on the House Democratic Partnership Committee, which requires me to travel abroad to help emerging democracies. I have a lot of legislative basis to travel, and so there you go again, lying. You have no respect for the truth.
Okay,
anything you say is suspect.
We can go.
Conversation starter. Now, the reason why I mentioned, going back to Congressman Ellison, the reason why I mentioned the fact that he said he was on the Foreign Affairs Committee and he wasn't is because we have to understand.
I was on the Foreign Affairs Committee.
He said that
I'm not going to let you sit here and lie like that.
It's on my website.
You lie all the time. You're lying
on my
now.
Website.
You are not to be believed.
Okay.
And you are, and it's amazing how you lie.
Okay.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself, the liar you are.
It's on my website. Okay, that's what you told him.
Do you have any respect for the truth at all?
That's what you told him.
Do you have any respect for the truth at all?
Well, how about the fact
Stop lying.
Did you say you were going to release your tax returns, and did you do it?
I'm not releasing nothing to you.
Okay, you said that you were.
If the press wants my tax returns, they can have it. Oh, and by the way, I issue a disclosure all the time.
Okay,
you
so
can go
did
check
I.
it out. Well, we're not talking about you. You asked me if I was going to release my taxes.
You said you were.
Not to you. I'm waiting for a reporter to ask me for it.
Okay,
I'm not dancing to any music you play.
Congressman Ellison,
point out what I heard in Congressman Ellison's plan. What I've read is this: more taxes for everyone because you don't have enough rich people. More taxes, more food stamps, and some of the other arcane stuff he supports, like reparations for slavery. That's the Ellison plan for fixing the economy.
That's ridiculous.
All right, 1 minute response.
That's another bold-faced lie.
Did you support that bill?
And it amazes me.
Did you support that bill?
It amazes me that you could sit here with a straight face.
Did you support that bill?
It was a study bill. It wasn't about any money.
Why are we monkeying around?
No, wait a minute.
With that?
I'm not going to deal with you because you're just silly, really. But the fact of
I
the matter,
didn't sign that bill.
Here's the reality. Yeah.
So what you said on our last debate was, oh yeah, that's a job for the city council. Okay, so I understand this. By 2050, the United States will be a 51% minority, okay? And at that rate, we cannot afford to continue on with the largest achievement gap in education between black and white students right here in our country.
And what have you done about it? And what have you done about it? No, I want to know what you have done about it. Because veterans
can I finish my answer?
that I know have done a lot.
So let's talk about that $716 billion. And where does it come from? $39 billion comes from a pay cut to skilled nursing services. Now, I don't know anyone in the 5th Congressional District who thinks that nurses are living high on the hog. Okay, and
nurses endorse me, by the way.
And you know
they know all about this program.
I'll tell you why they did. Because they believe
that I'm better than you.
When push comes to shove, you're gonna go in there and say, "Hey, we can't cut this money out from nurses. We got to give them that $39 billion up," which would make the cost of Obamacare even more. Because even the doc fix every year, we're going in there. There's a sustainable growth rate, and every year the doctors come in there. They throw you.
Question for you, especially if you're a Democrat. Do you want this person representing you as the Attorney General? If you're an independent or Republican, do you want this person representing you as the Attorney General? And just remember this, when it comes to election fraud, when it comes to recounts in elections, 10 years ago we had a massive statewide recount that gave us Al Franken as U.S. Senator. Who sits on the recount committee? The Attorney General, I believe. It's been 10 years. Nonetheless, when election matters are prosecuted from the state, the Attorney General's involved. You want Keith Ellison as your Attorney General? Do you want somebody who wants to continue to go after businesses and push more businesses out of Minnesota? Then you'll get more of the same as we've had with Lori Swanson if you elect Keith Ellison. Probably actually be Lori Swanson on steroids from her policies. Is this really who you want as the Attorney General? I think you can do better than that. We're going to actually show one more thing, and then we got a couple of guests we're going to be bringing onto the show. And yes, because we don't have our lower thirds operational today, you are watching North Star Oasis. I'm your host, Jeff Williams. We're here on August the 9th, 2018. Thank you for watching us. We do have our past episodes available on Facebook and YouTube, Facebook.com/North Star Oasis and YouTube.com/North Star Oasis. So what we're going to show now is some stuff that happened here in the Twin Cities, and I believe that this was either earlier this week or last week. So let's take a look at what was going on.
My name is Robert Marvin, and I voted here in 2014. I believe it was in the early voting. My son and I went here to vote in the Brooklyn Center City Hall during early voting, and they had a person who was bringing people in, driving them in, and then standing right in front of the desk where the city clerk gives you your ballots and so forth, and looking at you as you fill this stuff in and listening to what you'd say. And then she ended up following us into the area where we vote and started looking at our ballots, and then started telling us who to vote for and telling us not to vote for this person and not to vote for that person because they were Republicans. So what this person was doing was bringing in voters, and then what they were doing was they were telling people who to vote for. Yeah, they were same-day voter registrations. And then, I don't know if they were registering the same day or not. All I know is they were coming in, and the person was witnessing them fill out the ballots, making sure they voted for the correct people, and then she was making sure they sealed up the envelopes, and was witnessing her returning them to the city clerk. And then also, besides assisting these people, she was also involuntarily assisting people who were in the polling location, like myself and my son, who never even asked to have assistance. And according to the statutes, people who are bringing people in, driving them in, are not allowed to tell people who to vote for. And they're definitely not allowed to tell people who to vote for who didn't even ask them to. And in addition to that, I thought one of the mayor candidates was there during the elections, because when I came in the door, I saw his signs right outside the door. So I just assumed he was in there. And when I went in there, he wasn't there, and it turned out it was one of his workers who was there doing all this stuff.
My name is Don Baumgartner. I've been an election judge since 2012. Robert Marvin notified me about what was taking place here at City Hall, and I noticed this vehicle, a white Toyota, parked right by the entrance to City Hall with campaign signs all over the vehicle. I was worked at the primary election in Precinct 4, and this gal was bringing in people all day long. They were same-day voter registering, and then after they registering on their own, after they got done registering, she was going with them and telling them who to vote for, or showing them who to vote for, followed them through the whole process. They didn't need any help. So she had the campaign signs on the vehicle, parked in a polling location. They're not even supposed to be within 100 feet, or even anywhere in the polling location. I notified the city clerk about this, who's in charge of elections here, and she said they can assist as many people as they want to, no problem. Sharon Knutson was the city clerk at the time. She has since retired recently. Oh, the candidate was Michael Elliott. He was running for mayor. This is 2014. Same thing occurred during the general election. This gal was doing the same thing at Precinct 4, and notified Sharon Knutson about it again. She says they can assist as many people as they want to. They same-day registered it on their own. They didn't need any assistance. It's a violation of Statute 211B.11, Election Day Prohibitions. We kept reporting this to Sharon Knutson, and her comment to me was the city attorney said this was legal.
Who the city attorney right now at that time is actually a question, because the city attorney previously was Charlie Lefevre, and he passed away. And we now know who the current city attorney is. And the law firm that represents us, Kennedy and Graven, has not changed the entire period. But up until even today, they declined to say who the city attorney was at the time, because they've been refusing to produce this piece of paper. When I made my complaints, I complained 3 times directly to the city clerk. Also, I think it was the assistant city clerk who was there, and I was literally, in the city hall. So it was the head election judge was the head election judge for the city clerk. I complained 3 times, and she was obviously very frustrated, very irritated, and she actually even wove this piece of paper saying that she got this from the city attorney, and she was told that this is assisting and it's legal. And I complained that this stuff isn't legal. I ended up pointing out like 15 things that I felt was illegal about it. And even the city attorney currently, the guy who I'm sure was the city attorney at the time, agrees that all 15 of those things are illegal. We got the Kennedy and Graven lawyer from Broken Park to agree this stuff was illegal, and we even got the people from Minneapolis to agree this stuff is illegal. But even till and we went through this with the Charter Commission, and it's been going on for 4 years. And we only recently got some resolution to it. We had the city attorney come in and talk.
I and Robert are both on the Charter Commission, and we're supposed to make sure that the city is following statute. So we brought this up, and the chairman of the Charter Commission is also the chairman of the SD40 DFL. Along about this time also, there were numerous openings on the Charter Commission, and somehow they all got filled by Democrats, and one of them was the Michael Elliott, who was running for mayor when this was going on. They fought us tooth and nail didn't want us to be able to even get any information on this. City clerk couldn't find anything. The city manager said they couldn't find anything. But the fact remains that this was illegal, and she told us that this was the city attorney said it was legal.
I'll help these guys out with a little statute stuff, okay? The state statute is very clear. There's a thing called vouching in the state of Minnesota. You can vouch for up to 15 people, but that does not mean assist them in voting. That just means you're vouching that they're a neighbor and they're eligible to vote at this station. When it comes to voter assistance, that can only be, according to statute, with people that either have a mental or physical disability and they need help voting. So those are the statutes, and it sounds to me like what you guys are presenting is they violated those Minnesota statutes. Now, if there are some city statutes you guys are talking about, or an ordinance or whatever it is, that they really don't ever, city ordinance very seldom can, trump a state statute. So whatever city things they were talking about, I don't know if they're eligible or not, but that's the state statute, because I worked on the voter ID amendment, and we were very clear on that.
The city cannot supersede state statute. This involves state statute that the city clerk said the city attorney told her that it was legal for this stuff to go on.
We have lots of other examples of state stuff, but we can do that some other time.
The time has arrived, because with us today is Robert Marvin and Don Baumgartner.
Thank you.
Robert, Don, it's good to meet you, and thank you for coming out here today.
Thank you.
So, after this was all said and done, what do you do next? You guys made a video, you made some claims. What's the follow-on procedure?
Well, we're hoping that it's not going to happen again in 2018. We're hoping that we're going to have honest elections in 2018.
Yeah, exactly. We need fair, honest elections. And
so when something like this happens and you see it, what do you do? I mean, is there a process in place to hold those officials accountable?
What I try to do is I try to contemporaneously report it and record it and get evidence of it. A lot of times, especially if you're a candidate, for example, and there's a lot of things going on all the time, it's very, very difficult for you to go through all the work of reporting things, going through reports and so forth. So a lot of times what you do is you just record it and you get evidence of it and you pull it all together as a package and then move on.
Yeah, also when you're a candidate, you can't work as an election judge in your precincts, so any of the precincts, wherever you're a candidate. So
okay, so if you're not a candidate. So I'm not a candidate, I go to my precinct, I see something like this happening. What am I supposed to do?
You're supposed to report it to the head election judge. Okay. If the head election judge winds up telling you basically to go pound sand or whatever, you should at least document the fact as much as you can. I don't believe that you're allowed to take pictures in the polling locations. I don't allow. There's a lot of stuff that you can't do, but you should document it. You should get as much proof together as you can, so that way at least you can come back later and report it to a higher person.
Okay. You mentioned that there was other examples that you can give for another time. Well, that time has arrived. So what other examples do you guys have of what's going on with city government when it comes to elections?
We have a lot of issues in Brooklyn Center. I don't know if there's anything in particular Don wants to talk about.
Well, you can probably relate back to 2010.
2010 is a really good example.
Campaign science.
Actually, before we actually talk about 2010, since you mentioned 2000, that's 8 years ago.
Yep.
Have things gotten better or worse or about the same since 2010?
I started running for office in 2010. 2010 was probably up until this year, was the worst one. And then I think things got better. We had some real serious stuff happen in 2010. I think 2010 got a little bit better, but 2012 was pretty bad. I think 14 and 16 were relatively amicable. But 2018, this is only the primary right now. And we've had just so many examples of stuff from just this year that are still developing. So
let's go back to 2010. What happened then?
Well, according to what I've heard from Robert and a few other people, numerous campaign signs of a Republican candidate were found in the garage.
For 40B.
For 40B.
46B at the time.
In the garage of a city commissioner.
Ooh.
And the police were contacted. There were witnesses there. The police refused to do anything about this. So there's a problem with campaign signs being stolen, vandalized, etc., and nobody, when they're caught, nobody being held accountable.
the other commissioners were the ones who caught them. And they were just saying, the police basically just joked about it, and they were saying just give them the signs back and it's all good.
So how do the Democrats keep winning in that area?
That's a highly Democratic area. Going back to 2014, Robert thought it was amicable. It wasn't. This gal and other people accounted for numerous votes up and down the ticket for strictly Democrats, and it very well could have affected the outcome of.
Going back to 2008.
2008 convention.
We had the recount, the statewide recount with Coleman Franken. How were things that fared out in your area on that recount? I mean, was it a complete mess, or was it actually pretty, even-handed?
Well, I was involved in the recount. We were going through counting ballots and checking them, and it didn't seem like there was any errors in it in terms of looking at the ballots themselves, and I didn't see any possibility of the outcome being moved. It seemed like they were being accurate, and then I hear later on from other witnesses that it wound up being where I was from, that wound up swinging a lot of it significantly in favor of the Democrats.
I've talked to a couple people who were involved in the recount, and numerous ballots they're supposed to be initialed by 2 election judges, and if there's no initials on them, that means they can be added later on. And this the person that was screening these ballots during the recount, she said there were numerous ones, and she pulled them out because they should have been invalidated, and they turned it over to Michael Freeman, the county attorney, and his response, I've heard his response was, there's not enough evidence.
My understanding is the claim was that stack of ballots came from Brooklyn Center.
Well,
most of them.
So how do you
I can't swear to that.
When you know all of this stuff is happening, how do you get rid of these people? How do you clean up that system in that city?
We do what we can. It's tough. When you've got a group of people that basically a gang of 3 that lock up the council and intimidate city staff and get city staff to do things and not enforce laws and be fair and equitable and have equal treatment of Republicans, and they intimidate the city staff. It's tough, when you can't get equal treatment.
Talk about the intimidation. When you say intimidate city staff, how do they do that?
Well, in our city, we've got 5 people on the city council, and this has been a long-standing claim that actually we were ruled by just 3 of them, and they lock up, and that a lot of times there's 2 of them that are on the out. And those 2 on the outs a lot of times complain about what is going on with the other 3. And so the gang of 3 locks up and basically intimidates the city staff, because all it takes is 3 people to say you're fired. And they'll do that. They'll intimidate senior staff, and then the senior staff will be told what to do or not to do, and people like us don't get equal treatment.
Now, that's a Plan B city, right? City manager?
City manager, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the city manager is pretty much powerless in stopping this?
His job is at the will of the mayor and city council. So that's the rule of 3.
Yeah.
3 of them can dictate whatever happens in the city.
Yeah. Whether it goes through the gang of 3 or the city manager, the city staff, we're talking the senior level city staff, have to report through this food chain, and if the city are not happy with what they're doing, they could be let go. So if you're a person who reports, like for example, on financial reports, and somebody doesn't like the fact that you gave a candidate information about the deficit, then fairly quickly you might no longer be working there. So in my case, like in 2016, when I wanted to get information, because I ran for Senate in 2016, state Senate in 40B, I wound up getting all my information from the county, because I didn't want to have anybody get fired because they gave me information.
Are you running for anything now?
I'm running for Minnesota House,
okay.
40B, which is mostly Brooklyn Center and 3 precincts in Brooklyn Park.
Okay. And Don, are you?
I'm running for city council in Brooklyn Center.
Okay. And Brooklyn Center is the city of the problems, right?
The ones we're very familiar with, yes.
So you're taking up the mantle to try to do something about this?
We're trying to do something about it, yeah.
Good luck. That's all I can offer. Before the show, you guys were telling me about Antifa. And you guys had some interactions with Antifa.
We're very familiar with them. Yeah,
we've been we were at the state capitol for 3 of the events, and the second event, I and Robert and another friend of ours and a few other people, we were trying to go up the steps to the Capitol where these Antifa people were. They stopped us, and a friend of mine tried to stop somebody from, a gal from spraying somebody with mace, and when he did this, he was assaulted by numerous Antifa members, kicked in the back, kicked in the head, speared in the back with a flagpole, and there was virtually no law enforcement presence there, 1 or 2 state troopers. State troopers didn't do anything. They couldn't do much because there's only like 2 of them. So it was he got banged up really bad.
And this was the case when Tim Kaine's son,
Woody.
Yeah. Tim Kaine's son was his case was the first. First
when did this one occur?
This was May 6th, the one we're talking about.
Okay.
We were at the March for Trump one too. We were up on the upper deck, so we were all holding flags, looking down at it, and I was on a vantage where I could look down on the side of what's it called, the arboretum or something, or anyway, the amphitheater, the big round thing,
rotunda.
The rotunda, yeah. Sorry. I was looking straight down, and I saw the majority of the really violent stuff on that side. And the other 2 guys were looking back towards me, and the area that was underneath me was less that way. I got to see these people with the smoke grenades and sucker punching people and so forth. It was pretty bad. And I was basically up there holding a flag, so for the most part, the 3 of us didn't really participate in that one in terms of being directly confronted with Antifa people.
So now, have you guys ever been screamed at, shouted at, or even told by left-wingers over the years that you need to be tolerant?
That's what they say all the time.
Yeah, on March, was it May 6th?
May 6th was the one.
May 6th we go up the steps. I got surrounded. There was like 150 of them. I got surrounded by at least 30, and they had me locked in, so I was actually trapped in my position, so I couldn't leave. And they were literally this close to me, and I was surrounded by them. And they were yelling in my face and screaming, and I got a video of them, and they're this close. And they're screaming at me, and it's pretty menacing. And I was being repeatedly hit and punched, and I was being speared in the back, which is actually the only way I got injured, was somebody, I'm not sure if they were doing it with a pole or, I have no idea how. All I know is I was getting speared in the back, and that wound up being a problem. I ended up having to go in and had a chiropractor adjust me a couple times, but I wasn't hurt that bad. They were trying to tabletop me. They were trying to push me down.
Tabletop, what does that mean?
What it is they try to trip you up and try to throw you down. That's what they did to our friend. They knock him down, and they get him on the ground, and they start kicking him in the head and stuff like that. And I'm pretty big. I'm not as small. And for the most part, these Antifa people aren't real big. They're kind of small. The ones we see in court are kind of small. And then they think, in my case, they surrounded me with girls. So it was these girls primarily, and they were kind of menacing, yelling and screaming and stuff. And I was being hit, by girls, and I can, didn't really bother me that much. I was okay with it. It's kind of therapeutic.
You're okay. It gives you therapy to get hit by Antifa women. Okay.
Well, even the guys are kind of that way a little bit. But the guys were bigger, and they would sit back at like 6 feet or so, and they had all kinds of cameras, and they were videoing me from all these different angles, and none of those videos have showed up because those videos are bad, right? Because they're not showing anything that I did bad. I literally had a sign and my cell phone, and I was holding them like this, and I was standing my ground, stationary, and they were attacking me, and I wasn't doing anything. And eventually they got to the point where they were going after the contents of my pockets, and they were digging their hands in there, and I had to basically leave, and then they would push me out. But they tried a couple of times to throw me down, but when you have a bunch of girls, they're between, even though they were locking their arms and stuff, they weren't successfully able to throw me down. And I was on the steps, which is a dangerous place to be standing. But I knew that being thrown down would have been a bad situation when there was as many as there were. So I wasn't letting myself be thrown down.
When we were going up the steps, I was talking to some of these Antifa people, and I said, we are trying to enter a permitted rally here. And these Antifa people were saying to me, well, we have a permit for the steps. So I talked to a state trooper there, and I said, they can have a permit for the steps and stop people from entering their permitted rally at the state capitol? And? He says something to the effect of, well, I don't agree with it, but that's what's going on here. So something to that effect.
So now whenever you have a permit request, then you need to make sure you include the steps too.
The permit should include the steps. The fact remains that Dayton didn't provide the security, selective enforcement of the law, or stand down, if you will.
We got a video of them assaulting people with the officers literally 6-7 feet away and seeing the whole thing, and the officers didn't defend the victim on the ground being kicked in the head. So that really tells you we got to wonder why the police didn't help a person being,
or at least yell at them to knock it off. Get out. That's what I was doing. I was saying, get off of them, get away.
From what I've heard was that a lot of cases like this, law enforcement is told to stand down.
Yeah,
that's what we've
been told.
That's what we've been told.
So the officers were told to stand down, and we don't understand. Why would you let people be bear maced and tasered and beaten with sticks and kicked in the head and stuff right in front of you? I thought that their job is to serve and protect the people and defend people, and they should at least push them off the person so the person can get away or something.
Yeah, it's sad.
It
only seems that this type of stuff only seems to happen in democratically controlled jurisdictions.
So would it be correct to say that Antifa essentially is kind of the spokespeople of the Democratic Party?
I think their job is to shut down everybody else's free speech. I think that's what their job is. And Antifa, they're supposed to be anti-fascists. Yeah. They are the fascists.
So if you were to talk to Democrats right now, any Democrat watching this, Democrats at home, may not even be active Democrats, but they show up and vote Democrat, what would you tell them because of the stuff that you've seen? Because you're coming from a Republican perspective. What would you tell a Democrat about Antifa? What would you tell them about the conduct? What would you tell them about voting fraud?
Why don't you want public safety? Why don't you want people to be able to have an assembly and without being assaulted and their First Amendment rights taken away and getting severely assaulted?
Robert?
I think they should be thinking about history, and the Friends of the People and the brown shirts and stuff. And why are you guys thinking that this is okay to be doing this kind of stuff? They used to be the party of tolerance, and about protests and peaceful behavior, and it seems like they're advocating. Especially this year, we've got people that are, 2018, we got people that, my wife's originally from China, and the Chinese people always believe in their elders and respecting their elders and stuff. And in China, they had the Friends of the People. And this cycle, I've been interviewing some of these activists who are for opponents of mine, and they're talking just like the Friends of the People, telling me how their parents are ignorant and stupid, and saying horrible stuff about their parents. And these Antifa people, that we're getting nowadays with these, dressing up with masks and stuff. We had this issue at the Osseo school boards, right? You were there, and we go there because we had this person that we've had problems with that was wearing this blue tape on his face. And I go there and I start talking about how it's wrong to be advocating for violence and stuff. You should be not being doing thuggery and stuff. If you guys want to have free speech and so forth, that's fine. And then I end up getting on the way out, one of these people that was the protesters ended up threatening to bomb my house, and then that was just this year, yeah. And we got that on tape. But it's sad, you know, it's really sad that, that they're advocating for behaviors like this when historically, you know, when Hitler took over and when the Mao was taken over, you get these groups, you know, like this that start, and the young people mobilizing, and they're intimidating older people, and they're, you know, turning in their parents for dissenting against the government and stuff. And I think this is a sad thing.
All right. Well, Robert Marvin, Don Baumgartner, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yep.
And we are going to leave you with a reminder to go ahead and peaceably vote, legally vote on Tuesday in the primary. And with 137 shopping days left until Christmas, and we're about 90 days away from the midterm election. So we're going to leave you today with Locked and Loaded by the U.S. Air Force Band's Max Impact.
7-1, dog.
For Dallas Pearson, producer, I'm your host, Jeff Williams. You're watching North Star Oasis, reminding you there's 137 shopping days left until Christmas. Thanks for watching. See you next week.